Hello, Podfam, and hello, Rachel. How are you today?
I am good, Laura. How are you today?
I am good. How are you doing though in our how do I describe it? Gym lockdown phase, even though we were just getting back into the gym.
I was waiting for you to ask me this question. Not bad. I have not worked out today, even though that was on my list of things to do, but like I got distracted and ate some cheese, so I didn't do it today.
Cheese is good. Cheese is
Um,
very good.
but I actually was not very in good health for a few weeks
All
there.
right.
So my plan to do yoga and skipping got halted for about a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just getting back into the yoga. And you know what? I love
Oh,
it.
good.
But when we got the announcement today that gyms will be opening back up to 50% capacity on January 31st, I was very, very happy because, like, I just need to go somewhere.
Same. Okay. I'm glad you feel the same as I do here because even though when I was going to the gym, I wasn't really doing a whole lot, like I was literally walking on an
Mhm.
incline, I still loved it because I was like, oh, I've gone out today. I've left the house
Yes.
where I really haven't, with the exception of like when I go ride my horses on the weekend. I don't leave the house during
Mhm.
the week and it's kind of sad. And my gym, they kind of offered like the virtual classes, so I
Yeah.
signed up for 2 of them, and, like, they were fine, they were good, like, I felt worked, I wasn't really, like,
Mhm.
cardio based, I wasn't really sweating or anything, but, like, from a toning strength based, it was okay. The only
Mhm.
problem is that they were an hour long, and they started at 5:45, which
Yeah.
is just it's a hard time for me because it's one thing if I'm, like, done work, I'm immediately going out, and I'm back in, like, an hour and 15. That's cool with
Mhm.
me, but when I'm done work at, like, 4:30 or 5 o'clock, I then have to, like, sit down and chill for an hour or so. I really struggle to then get into a workout, and an hour is just a long time for me at the moment,
Yeah.
especially with something that's, like, not super engaging,
Mhm.
and then that's also, like, prime dinner time because by the time you're done that, it's, like, quarter to 7. You gotta get cleaned
Mhm.
up, and then you gotta make dinner, like, I think if it was a little earlier in the evening, maybe I'd be more inclined to do it, and if there was, like, 45 minutes.
Mhm.
So, I am not really doing that whole lot right now. I've been doing some squats. That's, like,
Yep.
the most I've done.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's still cold and dark,
Yeah,
like
it is. This is, like, the height of I don't wanna go out and do things.
yeah, like, even with the yoga, which, yoga with Adrienne's really great, where, like, the longest, it tends to be 30 minutes
Mhm.
max during her 30-day challenge, but, like, that's a lot for me.
Yeah.
But I am pretty excited because, I've actually been able to start going into an
Oh,
office.
yes, this is big news for you.
It's big news. I actually, go to an office during the week, which has been nice. I feel much more productive because it's, like, the environment.
Mhm.
And it's actually 5 minutes away from my gym that I was planning to get a membership for before everything shut down again. And I'm actually very, very excited for it to just be that close because it's like now I can just start doing that thing again where I go directly there after work.
Yeah, see, that's what's so great. I love when things are super close because even from me working from home still, the gym I
Mhm.
was going to was only a 5-minute drive.
Mhm.
And I loved that because I felt like I just got in the car, I listened to like 1 or 2 songs, and I was there. And then I literally, like, would read my book while I was on the treadmill, and then I'd go home, or I'd stop at the grocery store on the way home. And, yeah, it just kinda felt like I could do everything and, like, feel nicely worked in an hour.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I'm very much looking forward to the day when we can go back because, I'm done with working out from home, and I think my body is too. My body's like, "There is only so much we can do with a 8-pound weight and a resistance band for 2 years."
Yeah, and I find it's, like, a whole other level of willpower to, like, turn on a
Oh, yeah.
video or do something in your house, like, it's so much easier to get in your mind of like, "Okay, at, like, quarter to 5, I am in my car and I'm leaving," you know?
Yes.
it versus like, okay, it's like 4:45, I'll turn on my laptop, but like, I'm just kind of sitting here on my bed and it's just so much harder.
And, like, I've been on a computer all day.
Yeah, so you don't really want to like now stare at one even more
Yeah,
to do like a workout.
yeah. Also, this episode, guys, is not about fitness,
No,
like, at
sorry.
all.
It kind of just became that. We were just catching up on our gym routines and keeping our listeners
Mhm.
up to date on what we're doing because I feel like we're all in a slump right now, even though a lot of people maybe aren't in lockdown. It's just that time of year where
Yeah.
you just don't feel like doing a whole lot.
No, but then we just amp up the recording, so you know it's beneficial.
Yes, we have been so productive on the podcast side, so this is
Yes,
great.
this is our 2nd episode this week, like, who are
I
we?
know, we're on a roll.
Professionals,
Yes.
professionals.
Yes.
Yeah, well, what are you having to drink this evening?
So I am drinking a tea I'm probably gonna regret later when I'm going to bed, and that
Oh, good.
is lemon gelato oolong tea.
Interesting.
Yes, so this is like a classic tea, so it is caffeinated naturally, but it's just so good because it has this, like, lemon zest to
Mhm.
it, and yet it also tastes, like, kinda creamy. Like, it literally smells like gelato and kinda tastes like it, but just a tea version. I know I'm gonna be mad later, but right now I'm very happy. What about you?
I am having tried and true peppermint tea.
Mm, that was
Mhm.
I was so close to pulling peppermint, and then I found
Yep.
this bag instead.
Oh, it's so good. I'm really, really enjoying it. I don't know, the brand of tea bags that I got at the grocery store of the latest round of herbal teas I've been drinking, they're just really good.
Excellent. Was this like a mixed
Really
box that you
good.
got, or did you just kinda go all out and get a bunch of different things?
I got 3.
Okay, that's not
Yeah,
bad.
3 different boxes. So, yeah, it was really good. Like, even yesterday with the episode we recorded yesterday, like, the ginger tea was delicious. So,
Perfect.
yeah, 10 out of 10.
Excellent. Glad you're
But
getting some variety.
yeah, yeah, and then I know that my tea order was recently put in, so I'm have even more on the way. It's so exciting.
Your pantry's gonna start looking like mine where tea falls out every time you open the door.
Well, you see, when we have a podcast that is pretty much centered around, what tea we're drinking for the first 10 minutes, I need more variety.
True, true. This is why we need a tea
Mhm.
sponsor.
I know.
Anyone wanna sponsor us with tea?
One day when we get fancy enough and have a business account, we can just expense it.
Excellent. What a plan. What a
Yeah.
plan. Anyway, we
What
should
a
probably
plan.
get into our topic that we're talking about this evening.
Yeah, probably. Probably. Can you tell that we're tired and the week is almost over?
Ah. All right. So, fellow listeners, we are going to be discussing a bit of a pros and cons this evening, and that is of whether it's best to live in the country or the city. And Rachel, you
Mhm.
and I have both kind of done both. We've both spent some time deep in the city, kind of in the suburbs, in the country. We've kind of lived all over. So,
Mhm.
I don't want to say like one is better than the other because like obviously I have my own personal preference of what I like, but
Mhm.
it really depends on the type of person you are. And so, if we have any listeners who are kind of curious about one place or the other, we kind of hope that this episode is going to just give you some food for thought of what to consider if you either want to move to the city or to the country.
Indeed. And before we start, I do want to make a little shout out of where this episode was inspired because we mentioned her in what would have been
Last
the
week.
episode that we released last week.
Yes.
And this was inspired by a vlog that Kaylin Nicholson did about her transition from city life in Toronto, Canada to where she now lives in the rural countryside. So if you like this episode and you want to hear more, go check out her video. It's on her vlog channel, Kaylin Nicholson.
Yeah, and I actually just watched the vlog the other night, kind of prepping for this
Mhm.
episode, and I really love that she did like a Q&A near the
Mhm.
end,
Mhm.
where a lot of people just had some good questions about like a lot because I know
Yeah.
she became a homeowner.
Homeowner. Yes, a
So she
homeowner.
yeah, so she So she became a homeowner when she moved out to the country. So a lot of people had questions about that, and I thought they were all very good ones. So, we're probably going to
Mhm,
touch a little bit on that in some of our points here. But
mhm.
one thing when we decided to do this topic the other night, did you ever watch the TV show Country Mouse and City Mouse?
I know the concept.
Okay,
I
because
know the concept. It's definitely, like, in my brain, in, like, the depths of my memory, so I know exactly what you're talking about, but I could not bring up anything that actually happened.
okay. Well, as soon as we decided on this topic last night, of course, I like YouTubed the theme song to that TV show
Oh
because
my
I don't know
god.
why. That's all I could think about. So, yeah, that was my first impression of when we decided to do country and city living.
I love it. I love it. So, to start off, maybe we just give everybody a bit of a background on our lives because we've definitely gone back and forth between country and city life pretty frequently through childhood and in our 20s. So, want to take us away with that?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit biased when it comes to the childhood part because I've only ever lived in small towns when I was growing up.
Yes,
So
same.
I don't necessarily have that experience of what it was like to be a kid in the city or in like a really busy suburb. I had to consult my
Mhm.
boyfriend for that one, and he gave me some valid points. So yeah, like most of my childhood was spent time in different towns, but all very small. And then I actually went to post-secondary in a big city. So that was
Mhm.
like a big change for me. I'm pretty easygoing on where I live and stuff, but it was a lot of fun living downtown and just experience like a completely different culture from what I was, familiar with. So
Mhm.
I lived, like, downtown for about 5 years, and then after graduating, I did end up moving back home for a few years, but, as many of our listeners know, like, I was in a long distance relationship with my boyfriend for many years, so, like, I was coming down to the city quite frequently, and now I have been living in the city for the past year, and technically, like, we don't live, like, in the hustle bustle heart of the city, but to
Mhm.
me, like, I guess it's really, like,
It
the
feels like
suburbs,
it.
but to me, it's the city. Like,
Yes.
when we were having this conversation before starting the show, my partner and I, and he was just like, "Well, we don't, like, really live in the city." I'm like, "We live in the city." Like, compared to my version of the country, we live in the city, and he's like, "Okay, valid
Yeah.
point." Yeah, so that's kinda, like, my brief experience of, like, where
Mhm.
I've lived throughout my life so far.
All right. Well, for me, I was the same. So I was actually born in a city. So I was there for 5 years of my life. Cannot, speak to that experience at all. Had no memory of it because I was
You didn't
5.
venture out too much on your own at the time?
No, no, not at all. And, I lived, again, similar to your situation now, like, kind of in a suburb, so it didn't really feel that city-like. And
Mhm.
then, I grew up in a smaller town that this is how Laura and I met, is we grew up in the same one. And then I was there until university where I went off I guess it would be a medium-sized city where I went to school, would you say?
It was a university town, but definitely bigger
Yes.
than what you were used to.
Yes, like, it did have a city center and some, like, skyscraper type buildings, just a bit smaller than, the bigger cities. And similar to you, it was a lot of fun, especially to be around, that many young people.
Mhm.
And, it was an interesting culture, again, because depending on which area of the city you went to, it was a very different vibe, so that was a lot of fun, and I was there for 4 years, and then I moved home very, very briefly because we went traveling, so that was nice, and then I moved to the downtown big city for, I think, 2 years. It was 2 years when I left, and, so I was down there working, which was a very different experience than going to school in a
Mhm.
city because, there it was fun, but it's a lot more, it's a bit less fun when you have to pay for it with your employment income. So that
Yeah.
was a bit, it was good, but it was rough. And then, during the pandemic, I guess this was 2020 merging into 2021, just because the city had been in lockdown forever, I decided to take a job in my hometown. Still technically living in the city. That's where I still was technically living there.
You were still a resident of.
Yeah, so I think I would do like 50-50, like 50% of my time in the city, 50% in the countryside. And then through that job, I met my boyfriend. He was stayed here for work because he found a good job here. And I just so happened to kind of fall into a really good job that allowed me to work here, and I never left. So I've been here for uh formally, I've been here for 6 months. Again, that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at, I
Yeah, like,
think.
on and off a year,
Yes.
but, like, full-time 6 months.
Yes, full-time 6 to 8 months. I honestly have no clue what day or year it is anymore, so
No one
yeah.
does. Um,
No
so
one
yeah,
does.
like, I think it's really beneficial to do both if you can and if you feel the
Mhm.
need. I think that's one
Yes.
of those tropes that a lot of people, whether they, I think it's mostly if you come from a small town. I think it's a little bit
Mhm.
more common that you feel pressured to move to a bigger town or move to the city. And there are a lot of factors that go
Mhm.
into that, school, jobs, lots of things that can be
Industries in
beneficial.
general.
Industries, yes, like whatever you want to do, but also just for a culture change.
Mhm.
Small towns are very small at times and they don't always kind of serve the needs or fit with the lifestyle that you want. So
Mhm.
if you kind of feel like that, like I'm definitely encourage you to try living in a different town or moving to a bigger city because it really is a fun experience, especially when you're young and you don't have a lot of quote unquote responsibilities in your
Mhm.
life, like if you don't have like a relationship or children or anything like that, it's kind of the perfect time to explore and move around and just see what you really like. I for one, people
Mhm.
were kind of surprised I moved to the city just based on how I am, but I loved it. Like I absolutely loved being in the city as a young 20 something girl. The culture was so much fun. There was just always somewhere to go, somewhere to like something to do.
Mhm.
And did you kind of have that same experience like when you moved out of the small town, Rachel?
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to jump off and say is that something that I do recommend that if you did grow up in a small town to spend a little bit of time in a city. It doesn't have to be like, the big city. It can be kind of smaller like my university town was. But I do think that it helps shift your perspective so that you can make the right decision for yourself as an adult about what kind of lifestyle you want to have. So keep that in mind because, you don't know what you don't know if you've never
Oh,
experienced city
exactly.
life before.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I think when I was in my university town, that was just, I was 18 to 21. I was having a great time. It was a lot of fun. And similar to you, there was always something to do. But when I did move to the big city, that was a really interesting time because I was dropped right into the entertainment industry as well. So that was really fun to have that experience of like I'm in the city, but I'm also kind of experiencing those entertainment industry events, which made it very fun. Uh, the one thing is though, and we'll talk about it a bit later, the city is hard when you are first starting out financially. And I find that I had a view of what living in the city was going to be like as a young person. And I kind of found out that financially it wasn't very attainable. And that was a bit of a hard fall, I would say.
It's no episode of Friends, so let's just say that.
No. You are
Yeah.
not living like Sex in the City.
No, not at
You are
all.
not experiencing that.
Yeah, like, for me, when I first moved to the city, I actually lived in, like, a family friend's house, and that was nice. Like, it was a nice size, had
Mhm.
my own room, shared kitchen, shared living room, that kinda stuff, and I was so close to transit that I could
Yep.
really get anywhere, but could also get out of the city really quick, which was great. But then when that house was sold and I had to find a new place to live to finish off my last 2 years of school, that's when I
Mhm.
moved, like, to the downtown core, and very quickly, like, I could not afford on my, like, student allowance a lot of apartments. So I ended up
Yeah.
sharing an apartment with a friend of mine who was, moving to the city to do her master's,
Mhm.
and we lived in a one-bedroom plus den, and my room was
Yep.
the living room plus den, and we lived like that
Mhm.
for 2 years, and you know what, financially, it worked out fine, and, like, we got along pretty good, so that was great, but, you know, it would have been the most perfect apartment for, like, 1 person or even a couple. It was a little bit small, but for, like, 1
Yes.
person, it would have been, like, an amazing apartment. So
Mhm.
that is just the thing, you know? It's expensive
Mhm.
anywhere you go to rent,
Mhm.
but especially in the city, like, it is, 1, so hard to find a place because
Yes.
we actually lost out, and this was before, like, well, there was always, like, a rental boom, but this was before things went, like,
Crazy,
ridiculously
crazy.
stupid crazy.
Mhm.
And we lost out 7 places before getting this apartment, and we actually signed the lease agreement before even seeing it, and I never even
Yes.
saw it, like, because I was away horse showing and my roommate was just happened to be in the city, and, like, after we signed it and gave them money, she looked in, she's like, "Looks great, glad we got a place," like, that's how cutthroat it is. Um,
Yeah.
so I highly recommend if you're gonna be looking for apartments in the city, use a realtor because that's how we finally ended up getting a place, is he just knew exactly what we wanted, what our budget was, and he was just like, "Hey, here's this, this, and this in this area," you know? So that was, like, a
Yeah.
huge thing I recommend because it's a
Mhm.
dog eat dog world in the city when you're trying to find a place to live. Forget about buying a place either.
Oh, yeah, just don't. We're millennials, we're too poor for that. Reference Our Truth About Being a Millennial episode.
Insert
Um,
reference.
you insert reference here. Another option that definitely exists, I'm pretty sure in, like, every city is, there's usually Facebook groups which are, like, roommate searches. That's what I used when I moved, and I did get lucky and moved in with some pretty cool girls and had a really cool apartment. My You'll kinda laugh at this, Laura, though, because, my apartment was a decent size. It was the top 2 floors of a house, and when, somebody was at once I had moved out, I was out for dinner with my boyfriend with somebody, and they were asking, "Oh, what was your apartment in the city like?" And I was just like, "Oh, well, like, it was a decent size and stuff. I think we have more space in our current spot." And he goes, "Rachel, it was basically a hallway with 3 bedrooms."
It was, like, I remember
Yeah.
going to your place, and it was so narrow, and I don't know why whenever, like, I think of your apartment down the city, I just think about how
Mhm.
narrow it was because literally it was, like, 3 flights of stairs
Yeah.
and, like, the odd bedroom that just, like, fell
Yeah.
off the stairs.
I'm pretty sure I fell down those stairs, like, twice.
Oh my god,
So,
that was a lot of stairs to climb.
yeah. So, it was great, like, that is another option to do if you need to get a place fast. Also, if you, don't have a roommate that you're looking for a place with together because, definitely when you're starting out, having your own apartment in the city is pretty much impossible.
Mhm.
So you do need roommates. So that is an option if you don't have somebody that you're searching with. Just be very careful though, because there's some real freaks out there.
Oh, it can be scary, and, like, you definitely wanna know you're in a safe neighborhood, and that was very important to my roommate and I at the time, just because, like, we were in our early 20s and both not really from the city and just wanted to feel like we lived in a safe place, so that was very important. So we kinda talked about a bit of a con on the side of living in the city. Let's discuss a pro, and that to me is you don't really need a vehicle because
No.
you can really get anywhere in most cities. In most cities, you have access to transit, and it's a lot more affordable than maintaining and parking a car. Because, like, girl here had to pay $110 a month just to have a parking spot at that apartment, and it, like, killed my soul a little bit, and that was,
Mhm.
like, an extremely good price too. Like, the average was, like,
Yeah.
150 plus.
Then meanwhile, you try to park it on the street and it's $150 a day.
Yeah, plus you get, like, a parking ticket just because.
True, true.
Yeah, so that is one thing, and, like, obviously, cost of transit's going up as well, but I still think, in terms of, like, maintaining a car, if you had car payments and just paying for gas, it's still a little bit more affordable than having to get a car. Yeah, so that's
I
one pro
agree.
about the city where when you live in the country, like, you literally have to
You need a
drive
car.
everywhere, like, there is
Yes.
no getting out of it. I remember when I turned 16, even before, when I was 15, I was in, like, the driver's ed program, and
Mhm.
I had, like, turned 16 just as they were about to start the driving lessons, and I had, like, my G1 that day and my G2 as soon as I was able to get it, because you
Mhm.
literally can't live without a car when you're in the
Yes.
country.
No. No, you will pretty much never leave where you live.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I live in the country, like, I don't even like, I live outside of a town. I'm not getting anywhere. If I don't got a car, I'm walking for, like, 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one thing, like, when I had my car for, like, my first 3 years in the city because I had free parking and it wasn't crazy
Mhm.
expensive, and I tried to do my first year at the apartment without my car, and as
Mhm.
someone who like, it was fine for when I was in the city, but it was so hard for me to get out of the city, so that's when I, like, finally broke down and spent the money, so that is one thing, like, if you're gonna live in the city, but you still need to get out of the city kinda quickly,
Mhm.
you might still want a vehicle.
Yes. And just, like, springing off of public transportation and the availability of that, I think just in general, a huge pro of city life is just accessibility to pretty much anything you'll ever need in general
Yes.
is way, way more of a thing in the city than the country, which, I honestly think it's a pro and a con because the pro is, if I want a certain thing to eat,
Mhm.
it's 10 minutes down the road. The con is if I want a certain thing to eat, it's 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah, exactly, like, it's so accessible, and that was one thing, like, I loved about living in the city is I could literally walk everywhere. I walked to
Yes.
school, it would take me about 45 minutes to walk there, but, like, I didn't even have to go to the gym, like, I was just kinda
Mhm.
nicely trim from all the walking I did, so,
Mhm.
I'd walk to school, I'd walk home, I'd walk to work, I'd walk to, like, the grocery store, walk all my groceries home, and, like, just everything was super accessible, and, like, obviously, there are some sketchy parts of cities that you wanna be careful walking around, but, like, I never really did feel
Mhm.
unsafe because there was, like, always just people around, and it was always pretty bright.
Yeah, and you were in a very, very populated
Yeah,
area.
I lived in a pretty good area, and it did have a lot of amenities around it, so, like, that was very fortunate. Your
Mhm.
area though, Rachel, I think I would be scared to walk around at night in.
It was a bit I had never walked around at night there, um, but again, that just shows what the rental boom was that a sketchier area is where I could afford to live. Um, that's one thing, like, in university, when I was living in a smaller city, I walked everywhere, like, my walk to school every single day because it was more on, like, an actual campus,
Mhm.
where your school is more intertwined with the city.
Yeah.
Like, every single day there and back, it was, like, 45 minutes to class, and then it was, like, 15, 20 minutes between classes, and it was great. Like, I do really miss that.
Mhm.
But then again, like, on the topic, just if we're talking about walking and accessibility of that, the one thing that I do love about being in a rural area as opposed to the city is, like, I live within walking distance to maybe 10 minutes of driving of, like, 30 hiking trails,
Yes.
which is very like, I have talked about it before, like, I'm literally obsessed with hiking. So having it so close by has definitely been a huge perk for me.
Yeah, and that was gonna be my next point is, like, okay, maybe living in the country, you don't have as many places to walk to, but you definitely enjoy that walk a lot more because you're just surrounded by nature, and for me personally, like, I know, Rachel, you kinda feel the same, where you just feel like your body exhale and relax
Mhm.
and slow down a lot because whenever I was walking around the city, like, I was power walking, like, I was just trying to
Yes.
get to my destination. I wasn't really enjoying or looking around at what I was walking through, but in the country, like, that's more of just a relaxation. So that is something I miss because, like, I'm fortunate where we live right now, kind of in the suburban area, that, like, we do have a small park that I can walk around. It literally takes me 10 minutes and it's not very exciting. So I do kind of miss, like, at my mom's house, like, she's out way out in the country. So, like, literally just walk out the door and you're in nature. And then even in my
Mhm.
dad's house, who's a little bit more in town, you walk down to the end of his street and you're on a trail. So,
Yeah.
it's just it always feels like you're so close to nature, and whenever my
Mhm.
boyfriend comes up there, he's always just like, "Oh, wow, the air is so fresh," and it's true,
Yeah.
and I remember the first couple times after I had originally moved to the city, and I would come back home, I'd be like,
Mhm.
"Wow, the trees are so green. The sky is so
Yeah.
blue." Like, it was just kind of a weird thing that I've never forgotten. Things are
Mhm.
just definitely more vibrant in terms of
Yeah.
life in the country that you just don't get in the
Yes.
city. Like, the city is very cold, especially in the wintertime. Like, you don't get the nice snow, and it just feels colder because it's, like, concrete and the wind, and yeah,
Wind tunnels everywhere.
you just don't get that same, like, comfort feeling that you do in the country.
Yeah, and another thing that when I made the transition to living up here fully, especially once, my boyfriend and I moved to our current apartment, that I never thought I would miss is genuinely just the friendliness of neighbors.
Yes.
Because, like, growing up, I obviously experienced it a lot, but similar to what I was saying at the beginning of this episode, like, growing up in a place that we did and then moving elsewhere and then coming back, your perspective of you coming back versus when you left is very different about your experience living where you live. And, like, I would remember, like, driving places with my parents and, people would wave at you as you drove by and all of
Mhm,
that.
or you're walking down the
And
sidewalk and with their dog, and people are like, "Hey, how are you?" You know, it's so cute.
yeah, where, like, when I was in the city, similar to you, I would put my head down and power walk. Like,
Yeah.
I was not looking at a single human being. Like, I was just always in my own world.
Mhm.
And, I find, um, you kinda need to be a bit more cutthroat in
Yes.
the city.
Yes, oh my
You
god, I
do.
kinda turned into, like, a bit of a bitch. Elbows out, get where you
Yeah.
wanna go.
I was literally about to say that is I feel like you kind of become a bit of a bitch.
Yeah.
Where, like, it's so, so cute, but every single morning we have, just a older couple that lives down the street from us that every morning at 7 AM, 7:30 AM, they walk their dog down the street, and they always make sure that when you're driving by, they literally stop in the road, they don't even keep walking just so they can wave at you.
Aw.
And I'm like, "You know what? It's the little things." Because I'm pretty sure I walked past, like, the same people in the city every single day, could not have told you that I walked past them the day before.
Oh, for sure, and, like, I know when I lived in the city, I did not ever know or see a single one of my neighbors, where,
Mhm.
like, at my mom's house, she kinda lives on, like, kinda like a crescent cul-de-sac, and,
Mhm.
obviously, like, everyone knows everyone, and they throw their own little block party, and then
Yeah.
on my dad's street, his neighbor, oh my god, he's such a sweet man, like, they have dinner parties for each other, or, like, they'll take turns snow blowing each other's driveways, like, it's just so cute how well,
Yes.
like, they've just become friends just from, like, living next to each other. It's not like they have anything else in common except for that, and,
Mhm.
like, it's just so nice to walk out of your house, and if your neighbor's in their driveway, you give them a nice little wave and ask them how they're doing. So, yeah, that's one thing I
Mhm.
always in the country, I've never felt, like, lonely, where
Yes.
in the city, like, because there would be times when, like, my roommate would go home for the holidays, and I know she was living in the city more during the summertime than I was, but it was
Mhm.
very lonely when it's just you there. Like, I I
Mhm.
would get kinda sad a little bit over the holidays because, like, I didn't have my car, so, like, I couldn't drive home. I would have to, like, take a bus and a train, and someone would have to pick me up, etcetera.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was definitely the hardest thing for me about living downtown.
Yeah, mine was the same, and I think, that sense of loneliness is partially why I decided that it wasn't for me because, a part of my move was definitely the motivation that a lot more of my friends or what I perceived as like the life that I was a bit more connected to at that time was in the city. Right?
Mhm.
Like, a lot of my friends who I went to school with, they had moved to the city and, you would come down pretty much, like, a few times a month anyway to visit your boyfriend at the time. So, I made that transition, but, like, the thing is that even though you live in the same city, it's very, very hard to make time to see your friends because especially if you don't have a vehicle, to get from one end of the city to the other, if your friend lives there, is about an hour and a half public transit,
Yeah.
which is the same amount of time that it would just take me to drive from here to their house.
For sure.
So
Yeah, yeah, it's just kinda like
mhm,
even though you're surrounded by people, you're not really, like, with people, and that was a hard thing for me
yes.
living in the city. Another
Mhm,
good thing, though, being so close to different amenities is that I found that I would kinda, like, I'd be out in the community a little bit more
mhm.
because I mean, with a grocery store that's right next to you, and even now where we live, we literally walk to the grocery store because it's so close to us. I definitely kinda get out in that sense more, where if you live in the country, you're going grocery shopping once a week, and you'd better get everything because, like, you really don't wanna have to go back for just a couple of
Mhm,
items, and, you do
mhm,
cook for yourself a lot more, and I feel like that's, like, a pro or a con, like, from a financial side, it's definitely cheaper to cook all your
mhm,
meals, but then, like, in the city, it was kinda fun just to, like, pop out for a quick dinner, and also in the
mhm.
country, this just popped in my head, like, Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes and all that DoorDash stuff, like, that's non-existent. Doesn't
It's not
happen.
really a thing.
No, it's not a
You
thing.
can you can you can Uber Eats McDonald's. Um, but see, yeah, I love Uber Eats. My bank account hated Uber Eats.
Especially because like, at the start of the pandemic, you were still in the city, so, like, that was all you had.
Yeah. Yes, that was pretty much it. But on just the topic of jumping off of loneliness, I do wanna have a bit of a discussion just about friendships and socializing in the city versus country, specifically as an adult, because in general, I think no matter where you live, making friends as an adult is very, very difficult.
Yes.
So, what's your experience been with friendships and socializing depending on where you've been living?
Oh, okay, that's a good one. I feel like
Mhm.
I don't know, I feel like this is such, like, a personal thing because it really depends on your lifestyle. So, in the city, like oh god, this is kinda sad, I don't, like, hang out with people in the city.
It's
One
okay, don't worry, I understand.
I don't have friends in the city.
When you're like, "Do I really have friends anywhere?"
I really don't. Um, e like, back in school, yes, I hung out with people, but that's going back again to, like, we lived on the same schedule, where now and even, like, my boyfriend can attest to this, a lot of his friends have moved a little bit further away, but, like, not really, not everyone's living on the same street anymore, so
Mhm.
you definitely see your friends less, and I don't think this is, like, a country thing or a city thing, I think this is just an adult thing. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, like, so I can't really say I've made, like, any new friends from living in the city. That being said, it's been
Mhm.
COVID and I don't go anywhere. Like,
True.
I do hang out with, my boyfriend's, like, friends' girlfriends, and, we all kinda get along, like, that's super chill for me, but I'm not, like,
Mhm.
calling anyone up to be like, "Hey, do you wanna, like, go grab lunch or anything
Mhm.
like that?" I don't know, I'm just not that kind of person, I'm not very good at making, like, a lot of friends,
Yeah.
I don't maintain big friend circles, and then in the country, like, I don't know, I have the barn life, so,
Mhm.
like, that's a big part of my social as
Yeah.
well, so I don't know, I don't really know how to answer that question because I feel like outside of that, it's not like I'm really going places to make new friends, and I'm not really trying either. So I'm
That's fair.
gonna put
That's
a
very
low
fair.
effort on that side for me. I'm like, I have a few friends. I'm good.
You're like, "I have a few friends. They all live in different cities."
I know. I freaking moved to the city. All my friends leave the city. What the fuck?
I'm sorry. Sorry.
What about you, though?
I think I have probably a bit more experience here because my experience living in the city, like I was already working as opposed to in school. And I would say that I definitely was more social with more people. I wouldn't say that I made any like deep, deep, deep friendships when I was there. Like, it kind of felt like the hangouts where you would go for dinner for 2 hours,
Yeah.
and that was the socializing where when I needed, like, to connect on a super deep level, like, I would just come home and hang out with you,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I still feel like that's like kind of an adult thing. Like it's harder to make friends as an adult.
Yeah, and just, like, socializing in general, again, tying it back to finances, in the city was hard for me because it's so accessible. So, there's, like, the museums or the coffee shops or the restaurants or whatever, that it doesn't feel necessarily when I was there like people would hang out just, like, at your house
Right.
with you or like go for a walk or something. It was always like, "Oh, let's go for dinner," or "Let's go to a bar, let's do this," which, I found, like, prevented me from socializing a lot because, like, it just wasn't in my budget.
Mhm.
Where I think in the country, a huge pro when it came to socializing for me is that it's more common to do outdoor physical activity
Mhm.
in the country, so I almost could use that as an excuse to socialize more and make deeper connections because I would just go for a hike with somebody where it's free and the only thing you can really do at that time is talk to each other.
Yeah.
It was interesting is, like, I socialized way more in the city, like, I had more connections, but here it's, just a bit easier for me with, like, my goals to socialize here, and I would say that the relationships that I maintain are a lot deeper.
Yeah, so I would definitely kinda say the same. Thinking of, like, when I was living downtown and in school, like, yes, I
Mhm,
definitely had a lot of friends, but again, like, I do only have my core people, and yes,
mhm,
like, one of my points I wanna lead off with that is that there's lots to do in the city, but it's not free or cheap
mhm,
sometimes, yet in the country, there's lots that you can do for free. Maybe not as,
mhm.
like, experiential as things going on in the city, like, plays and clubs and those things that you mentioned and, like
Art exhibits or
yeah,
museum
festivals, that
exhibits.
kinda stuff, like, yeah, the country doesn't have as much of that, but there is more to do for free, and parking is usually a lot cheaper.
Or just free.
Or free. Free is great.
Or free.
Yeah, so that's kinda like I mean, it could be a pro or a con, I think it just depends on
Mhm,
who you are as a person, like, what you like to do for fun. Like, if you
mhm,
wanna go have cultural experiences and kinda meet new people that way, the city is definitely the place to be. Where if
mhm,
you're more just, like, laid back and kinda wanna be quiet, the country
mhm.
is the spot. Yeah, so that's I don't know, I think that's a pro or con based on how you see it.
Yeah.
Let's kinda talk about living in the country, though. So, obviously,
Mhm.
these days it's hard to live anywhere. Real estate
Yeah,
real estate just sucks regardless.
it
And,
does.
I it is still more expensive, I think, in the city than it is in the country. Not far off, though.
Oh, it's really not.
It's
It's
really
really
not. It's
not.
really
I maybe save like $100.
yeah, exactly. So, traditionally, though, like, when the market's not doing stupid things like it's doing now, it is generally cheaper to rent and buy a house in the country. So, that definitely has its pluses because normally you can get a little bit more space
Mhm,
for your dollar, but some things also to consider is like the services. So if you're way out in
mhm,
the country, internet might not be the best. So if you have like
mhm,
a work from home job or like you're an influencer or a YouTuber or a podcaster and you really need a good internet connection. Well, living out in the boonies is not going to do you any favors because it
Mhm.
can be a lot more expensive to get services. Like I was renting a place in like the country and
Mhm.
internet wasn't even an option. I think it would have cost me $100 a month for less than
Mhm.
20 gigabytes and they had to use a satellite
Mhm.
to get me the
Mhm.
internet, and I was just like, "I can't afford that," so I literally lived summer without internet. It was hard times, guys. It was hard times. Um,
Couldn't watch the
yeah,
YouTube.
that whole place was an experience. I'll open up about that one a different day. So that's something to consider. You also have to consider, like, maintaining a lawn or gardens and snow removal. Lots of things to consider there. Like, a lot of the time, the whole property will require a little bit more upkeep versus
Mhm.
possibly like a city condo or townhome that might
Mhm.
include snow removal and you don't have to go out and cut the grass. So these are things definitely to consider, and lots of different like zoning laws out in the country. You might be thinking you're buying 100 acres, but maybe you can only use 5 of those acres because the rest is a conservation area. So
Mhm.
just a lot of things to kind of be aware about if you're kind of having that dream of a country property. It
Mhm.
definitely is a lot of work.
Yes. I got lucky with my rental that I don't have to do any of it.
Oh, yeah, you are extremely lucky with that. And also leading off of that is job opportunities. I think the past 2 years has been a bit of a game changer with
Oh,
companies
definitely.
realizing that, like, hey, you know what? It's easier for our employees and cheaper for us not to have to maintain brick and mortar locations. So work from home is more common now. And so I
Mhm.
think that's why we've kind of seen this bit of a disbursement of people moving out to smaller towns where they can have more space.
And live that cottage core life.
Yeah, I love that cottagecore life. But, there are still some industries and jobs that will always be more based in the city. So depending on your industry, you might not be able to get a job up in the country, or at least maybe one that doesn't pay as well. So,
Mhm.
and not to say there's lots of crap jobs in the city too. There's crap jobs everywhere.
Mhm.
But that is something to consider as well is, yeah, maybe you want to move up to that small cottage town, but are you going to actually be able to afford to live there? Because, like, there's a reason why the young people move to the city when they
Mhm.
grow up to get jobs. It's because a lot of the time, like, those same job opportunities that are going to pay well just aren't there. So,
Mhm.
definitely something to consider. But I mean, if you can take your work with you, or you are in an industry that is very big in a small town, then I
Mhm.
mean, I think you're laughing,
Yes, and it is also something to consider too is which town you are moving to if you want to live a more rural life, because definitely the town that I am in and that we both grew up in, a lot of people from the cities have migrated here.
Mhm.
So that work from home, like, pretty much you have access to majority of the industries because it's just become a bit of a more common thing where, if you're moving to like
Super north.
north
Super north.
northwest Ontario,
Yeah.
but, depending, like if it's like within a 2-hour radius of the nearest big city, like you should be safe after what's happened with the past 2 years.
Yeah. And something a lot of people are doing is they are moving out to the more uh rural towns, yet they're doing that commute, or like, they work from home 3-4 days a week and then go into the office
Mhm.
downtown on that fifth day. I think we've kind of gained a little bit of an upper hand when it comes to that work flexibility, because so many places are now offering it that most
Mhm.
companies, like, they gotta play. Like, they gotta play ball with that
Mhm.
so they can keep their employees. So I think it's actually an excellent time if you can do that with your job and your industry, and you do wanna get out of the city. Like, now's the time to kind of explore that option.
Definitely.
Any more points for you?
Like I did kind of want to discuss just general differences in day-to-day activities, but I'm like, we don't do that much. We don't do that much. Like nothing that I wouldn't say that I do anything differently.
Well,
I don't know if that's
I
lame.
could describe a day where I'm, like, truly living in the country if you want.
True.
Okay.
Why don't we do, like,
A day we're truly living in the city and a day we're living in the country?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Alright.
I think that would be interesting.
Okay. So, for my city one, it's definitely, like, getting up and going over to the grocery store, doing my grocery shopping, walking just, like, across the street to put my groceries away, and then it's just, like, walking along the streets and you're kind of watching like the city wake up again. I loved those early morning walks on my way to school when it was like
Mhm.
around 8 o'clock or just before, because
Mhm.
it actually was peaceful in those moments, and you were
Mhm.
just kind of watching everything get going. And you just kind of like you go to work, you go to school, you can go through the mall after, or it's like on your lunch break, and you like go to the food court with your friends. It just felt like you were a part of the pulse of the city, and
Mhm.
that's what I really loved. And then, like, I'd walk home. I had a gym right in my apartment building, which was fantastic. And,
Mhm.
yeah, like, it just kind of felt like everything was right there for me. But
Mhm.
this is like and these are true things. These are things that I do still now, in the country is I would, you know, get up, have breakfast, go sit on my back deck and, like, just listen to the birds, watch the sun come up, and I would go for, like, a walk with my dog or go for a bike ride, and then I'd go over to the barn, I'd ride some horses, and it would be, like, one of those, like, super hot 25-degree, 30-degree days, and on
Mhm.
my way home from the farm, I'd pull off, jump in the water, and then
Mhm.
get in, drive home, have dinner on the barbecue, and just finish my day again on the back deck, just watching the sun go down.
You paint such a nice visual.
Thank you, but, like, those are, like, my ideal days. Definitely more so the country one than the city one. I haven't felt the need for the city one in, like, many, many years.
True. True.
Yes, but the country one, I do that
Yes.
frequently all summer long.
Yep. Well, mine, if I remember them correctly, was I find I slept more in the city. Like
Oh, yeah?
the Sunday sleep in the city for young adults, I feel like that's a thing. I definitely would sleep until like 10, which I like don't do.
Not where I lived.
Uh
Remember my apartment, it was, like, 1 floor above the major
no.
highway?
That's true, that's true. I mean, in mine, I could, and I remember, like, I would wake up in the morning, and it'd probably be, like, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I would, like, slowly get up, make my coffee, and just, like, chill in the morning.
Yeah.
My roommate had a cat, so it was a lot of fun. I would hang out with her, and then I would often either walk down to the subway or I would hop right onto the bus that was outside of my apartment, and wherever I was deciding to go that day, I would sit on public transit and read my book,
Mhm.
which I actually really miss
Yeah, I used to do a
being
lot
able
of
to do that.
homework reading, like, whenever you had to read a chapter for a
Mhm,
textbook, I would usually read that on
mhm.
the commute home, and then I'd be, like, done my homework.
No, I really miss being able to use that commute time to read, and, something that we used to do that I really loved because we lived, in the western part of the city, which, was less skyscraper and more, original city, and every single convenience store was a plant shop
Yeah.
for some reason. So, we would always have, like, a lot of fun, picking out new plants, and, like, our apartment was, like, literally a greenhouse. And that was a lot of fun because, like, that was definitely a city thing for me was the plant thing because, you don't have as much access to green space, especially in an apartment, like, you probably don't have a lawn. So it's kinda like you make your own little green space in your house.
That's true.
So that was really fun. And I did really enjoy having the accessibility of, like, the mall
Mhm.
as well.
Same. Loved
So
it.
the bad thing is my bank account, again, didn't like it very much, but
Yes.
and then just, like, being able to, like, come home and, you feel like you've done a lot because you've been walking around all day and, you've been lots of different places that it feels like once you're home, your day's done,
That's true, yes.
and you just relax and you watch a movie and go to bed, and then you spend $30 to have Uber Eats delivered.
When you felt like it.
when you felt like it, which was way too often. Versus here, where I'm still kind of figuring it out because I definitely haven't appreciated the country lifestyle as much as I do now. I was definitely very against, which is like a hot take, but I was very actually kind of against country
Oh my
life.
god, you couldn't wait to leave. Like,
Oh,
you were
yeah.
like, "Get me out of here," like, yesterday.
I know, like, I could not wait to go, and now I'm like, I am the cottagecore queen. I'm like, "I will be here forever." So, I'm just trying to figure out what's kind of perfect for me now, but kind of my favorite days so far have been, just, like, being able to kinda wake up with the sun a
Yes.
little bit and getting to, like, I don't have any other properties around me, so when I look out my window in the morning, I can watch the sunset without obstruction
Mhm.
or the sunrise without obstruction, and that's really, really cool. I love, being able to, like, just go for a hike as my daily walk,
Yeah.
as opposed to walking around the concrete jungle, which has been really fun, and, I love being close to the water as well, but another thing is, like, I genuinely am loving, being so close to very integral people
Mhm.
in my life, like, I have never been able to, as an adult, I haven't, lived near my family ever, other than when I was living in their house.
Yeah.
So, it's been very, very nice to have that adult experience of living close to them, and then my closest connections, like you and another friend of mine, still come up pretty regularly, so I can see you guys as well. And, like, I think just I don't necessarily have an ideal day, it's just, like, I just feel at peace,
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
and it's very nice, and our apartment is, we have a porch back there that's, west facing,
Mhm.
so you can watch every sunset. It's just nice.
Yeah.
It's just
It's very
nice.
calm.
Yes, I definitely think with the years that I did live in the city, I did the city thing that I was ready to be where I am now.
Yeah, I was the same. I was very much ready to leave the city, and, like, FYI, another hot take here, guys. I only live in the city because my boyfriend lives in the city.
That is a hot
I
take.
know.
That's a hot
I know.
take.
If he ever got a job in the country, I'd be, like, gone. Um,
Yeah.
just because, like, it's fine, like, I don't
Mhm.
mind it, but for me, like, my soul is happier in the country,
Yes.
and, one last thing I wanted us to touch on is, maybe we won't talk too well, I guess we could touch a little bit on our childhoods, but just being the age that we are now,
Mhm.
when I think about having a family, I'm like, the country's where you raise them. Like, you don't raise children in the
Oh,
city.
yeah.
Or like my boyfriend's just
No.
like, "What?" Like, he's like totally like he wants to move to the country too if he can make that happen. But it was kind of
Mhm.
funny when we were talking about our childhood experience where he was just like, "Oh, I was exposed to, like, so much culture," and, like and granted, we grew up in the '90s where, like, you came home whenever you wanted. There was no adult supervision.
True.
Um,
There was
so it's
none.
probably very different for children these days than when we grow up. But for him, like, because I didn't have a city perspective to share, so he kinda
Mhm.
very graciously provided one where he loved that he had, like, so many different types of people around, and he
Mhm.
learned about so many different types of culture and, like, had so many friends. And, you really could have all those experiences of being, like, a city
Mhm.
kid, where for
Mhm.
me, I was, like, literally like, I walked to school by myself, I walked home by myself, my friends and I would, like, take off with our bicycles, and, like, honestly, as long as we ended up in our bed by the end of the day, like, our parents were like, "Cool,
Mhm.
you came home." Now, I don't know, maybe it's
True.
different for children these days where, like, they have supervision, I never did. Ever, ever, like, I don't think my parents knew half the shit that I was doing and where we'd end up, as long as you came home by the time, like, the streetlights came on, it was all cool, and I just loved that about being, like, a kid in a small town because we would literally get on our bikes and see how far we could go down a country road, um,
Mhm.
and then come back. And, you'd go down to the water, you'd go to the park, and, like, you'd go out and play in the woods, and I don't know, to me, like, that was a childhood. So but granted,
Mhm.
I am being biased here because I don't know what the alternative is like because I
Mhm.
never grew up with that. Um, are
Mhm.
you kinda the same, Rachel? Like, for me, I definitely know, like, if I were to have a kid, like, I'm like, "I wanna be in the country," just because it was great.
Mhm.
Like, there was just so much freedom and space and, like, you kinda, like, figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. No, I am definitely the same. When I have a family, I want them to be here.
Mhm,
So, there might be a time where, me either my partner or I have to go back to school or a job like for him takes us to the city. I will do that. But I do think when it comes time to like get married and have a child, I want to be here
mhm.
just because I find it's almost how do I explain this? It's you're not necessarily living a sheltered life in the country,
No, definitely
but I
not.
find you have there's more room to make mistakes without it being kind of dire. Like, I don't know, I'm very scared with children and I'm just like I would be very terrified of like my child walking into a place where they shouldn't be and something bad happening.
Yeah,
I feel like
same.
that is less common.
Yeah.
I feel like that's very much less common in the countryside because like I don't know, your neighbor is a squirrel.
Yeah, like, I never thought twice about walking to school as a kid and, like, my parents would
Mhm.
pick me up sometimes and stuff like that,
Yes.
but, like, if I was a parent in the city, I'd be like, "I'm not letting my
Terrified.
kid walk downtown to go to school,
Yes.
like, are you
Well,
crazy?" Like, I don't know why, and I feel like
yes.
it's probably, like it's not really that different, but I don't know, I feel like there's just so much more, like, autonomy to be a kid in the country,
Yes.
and man, this is where we needed someone with that city childhood experience so they could counteract us a little bit because I feel like we're gonna be like, "Country all the way."
Yes.
Um
Well, there's one thing specifically that, like, I'm thinking of when I say, like, being scared for like, I would be a nervous parent in the city, is I don't know if you've ever watched it, but it's on CBC, it's called Working Moms.
No, I haven't.
So, it's check it out, like, it's a fun, like, 30-minute comedy, and it's based in, Toronto, and, there's a scene where I think the daughter is, like, 12 or 13, and her mom is letting, her go on the subway system for the first time,
Mhm.
and she's, like, so nervous, and the kid it's, like, her first time going on it by herself, and she winds up missing her stop and winds up in kinda, like, a sketchy area,
Right, okay.
you know? And, like, that's just it's just, like, a small, like, misstep, and thankfully, in the show, the kid was safe,
Yeah.
but, like, that's what freaks me out.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I didn't ride the
Yeah.
subway for the first time by myself until I was, like, 19 years old.
Same.
Like,
Same, but
that's just different, though, different experience,
yeah.
so, but then there's other kids who are like you see them, like, I remember being on the subway going to school, and there'd be, like, a bunch of school kids just getting on by themselves, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Wow, they're so brave and independent." So, I really
Yeah.
don't feel like there is a right or a wrong decision of, like, where
No.
you wanna raise your family, but I think it definitely boils down to, like, the experience you had as a kid, because I honestly, like, I
Mhm.
don't know how to raise a city child. If that
No.
sounds really weird,
No.
like, I have no clue. I think I would just be so afraid.
Yeah, well, like, the difference too is, like, we didn't really grow up with that much to do
You
other
had to make your own
than
fun.
kind of yeah, like, go be active with your friends outside or, like, go to the barn. That was pretty much all we did, which, to some people might sound kind of like, Where the hell did you 2 grow up?" But I do think that something that gifted us was the ability to, like, just genuinely, 1 hang out and be comfortable with yourself?
Comfortable doing nothing, but I don't know, I'm also, like, a younger only child, and you're, like, also a younger
Yes.
child, so we had no choice to hang out by ourselves.
Yes, but I think it just, like it kinda forced you to be a lot more autonomous early on just to kinda keep yourself entertained.
Yes.
But then again, we're very biased. I did not live in the city, but, like, my
Yeah.
impression of living in the city is that there's, like, always something to do.
Yeah, yeah, like, they have
So
museums, they have, like, the science centers, they've got amusement parks and stuff like that, where for me, like, I remember being a kid, and we would go down to the city on, like, a long weekend, usually around my birthday time, like, once a year, and, like, it
yeah,
blew my mind because I was like, "Oh my god, we're going to the city," and then, like, as I'm older, I'm like, "I literally do this drive every weekend." Um,
I know.
so
And, like, going to the local, big amusement park was, like, an event that you
oh.
did every
Yeah,
year.
it was like the event of the year where I feel for, like, the city kids, they're
Yes.
just like, "Oh, it's a Friday, we're going to the amusement park." We're
Yep.
like, for us country kids, we're like, "Oh my god, we went once and it was amazing."
So, yeah, I feel like, some people listening are probably just like, "Are you 2
They're
okay?"
like, "Wow, the hillbillies are here."
So
You
uncultured.
know what? I had to make my own fun. I had my own magic forest, I had apple trees that I would
Yep,
climb, I really had to get
yep.
creative with with what I was given.
We would pick rocks
Oh, yeah, you go
out of
pick a
the
nice
arena.
rock. You found a snowbank and you're like, "Awesome. There's a ski hill for me."
You would just toboggan right into the street.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, yeah, like, into a parking lot and but there'd be no cars, so you're like, "Whatever."
No, no, and you're pretty much like it's not just like a snowbank, like, it's like the snowbank from the snowplow, so there's, like, rocks in it and everything. Okay, we're getting very off
We are
topic.
getting very off topic. This is becoming a different show of like, "Let's raise your children." How did you grow up? Yeah,
Mhm,
so let's bring it back to the main point is there is no right or wrong of whether
mhm,
you should live in the country because we all live in the country or live in the city because that's the cool thing to do. I think it's definitely something you need to consider for yourself, and don't feel pressured if you are happy with where you live, you know? If it
exactly.
ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. One thing, a very important thing that I wanna add here, because I definitely fell prey to it, and I think this is why I so desperately wanted to get out of there, is if it feels right for you to stay close to your family and to stay in your hometown, it's okay.
Yes, very much
You
so.
know, don't buy into that whole, like, "Oh, if you have moved to a new city and created an entirely new life, then you've won." Like, don't feel that pressure because if it especially, like, if, like me, you move to the city and you realize it's not what you expected and it doesn't make you happy, it's a lot harder to accept that maybe that wasn't the right decision for you when you are still holding on to that mentality. So I would just like if us as a collective society can just move away from that impression. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah, no,
about?
I think that's a very good point because, it's expensive to move either way.
Oh, it's very
It's very
expensive.
expensive, so if you're feeling the pressure, like, you need to go out and experience a different town, it can kind of put you back financially, where if you were
Mhm.
happy with where you're living, don't change. It's fine, and, I know a lot of people like, grew up with, some of them have moved, like, very, very far away or just moved to a city and, like, they're happy and they're never coming back.
Mhm.
But then a lot of other people, like, they went out, they did the thing at school, they maybe lived in the city for a little bit, and then they came back and they're just like, "Yeah, we're happy here." And,
Mhm.
I definitely think, like, I'm pretty chill about where I live, but, like, I'm definitely probably one of those people of just like, "I liked my town." Like, it was good times.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, like, I'm glad.
And if given the option, you would probably come back
Oh, absolutely.
at some point.
Absolutely. Like, that's kinda like my end goal, but I'm super glad that I've had the opportunity to go live in a city because I don't sit and wonder of like, would
Mhm.
I have liked that life?" Like, I now know I
Mhm.
lived it and, like, I loved it being in my early 20s. I absolutely loved the city life, and then when I got a little bit older, I was just like, "Okay, like, I've done it now. I'm ready for a quieter life." It's all very personal decisions that where you live,
Mhm.
that to make, but, like, it's always good to consider the pros and the cons of everything. So, we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. We're sorry if it got a little off tangent and rambly at times, but, like,
It
if you
always
listen to
does.
our episodes, that's just how we roll. definitely comment on our Instagram. Are you a city person or a country person?
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious about our listenership here of whether we have more country people or city people. And
Mhm.
definitely share this show if you feel called to. And Rachel,
Mhm.
do you have anything else to say?
Kaylin, if you're listening to this, come on our show.
Yeah, please. Please, we'd love to have a conversation. As fellow Canadians, we want to talk to you.
Yes.
And with that, live like tea, guys.
Live like tea.